What's up, everybody? Welcome to Move the Sticks. DJ Buck back with you. Buck, what's going on, man?
Not, man, excited, DJ. Obviously, we have a Thursday night football game ahead. We're already into the second week of the NFL season, meaning we're right here. Games are being played. And so you know how it is. We're now on the treadmill of the NFL season where things happen quickly. You take Monday, Tuesday review. Wednesday is turning the page, looking to the next week. And Thursday, we have games. And then when you mix in the college games, I feel like it's all football all the time when it comes to what our work life and even some of our personal life becomes.
Yeah, Thursday to Monday, man. Just block it off. Okay, here we go. We got great stuff going on every single night, man. It's fantastic. Looking forward to a great week of football starting tonight. Bills Dolphins should be a fun one. We're going to look at some of the other games this week that we're keeping our eyes on. But before we do that, Buck, I want to talk on the difference because Harbaugh said this in a press conference the other day, and it's been said by a bunch of people over the years. Yeah, the biggest improvement takes place from week 1 to week 2. So for someone who's been on both sides of it, from upstairs to downstairs, why would you say that is true?
Because what happens from week 1 to week 2, prior to week 1, you're hoping to be able to do certain things. You're like, hey, we think we're going to be this type of team. After you play a real game, you now have a greater sense of, that what we thought to be true, we're not going to be able to be that. So we need to begin to shift towards who we really are. So you're speculating prior to week 1, you're reacting after week 1 and trying to put your team in the best position. Also, when it comes to players, it's one thing to operate at what we call preseason speed. It's another thing to get used to the regular season. And as a young player, I just remember being told there are 4 speeds that you have to adapt to. There's preseason, there's regular season, there's playoffs, and then there's the Super Bowl. And every time you transition to another segment, the game gets faster and more physical. And you have to ready yourself for the increase in speed and intensity. That's why it changes, and that's why you're able to kind of go to the tape and get used to it. You have a better sense of what you're facing once you play that real game.
Yeah, I wrote down three T's. 3 reasons I'm with you that I think you do see a big jump here. First of all, let's start with the first T, simply tackling. You're going to see tackling get better over the course of the next few weeks. And it just is what it is. We just don't do it much anymore in camp, and guys aren't playing as much in the preseason. So you're going to see better tackling as we go forward. And I think that starts this week. The next thing is just from a game plan standpoint, we start to have some tendencies. It might just be 1 week, but you got a little bit of feel like, hey, this team's playing a lot more of this coverage than they did in the past. So we're going to be able to craft our game plan a little bit more towards how this team is playing with their current personnel. So you got tackling, you got tendency. And the last thing I wrote down was what you discussed, which is tempo. You can't replicate game speed. You just can't. So that's going to be adjustment. And I think so many people have focused on the young quarterbacks and the struggles that the rookie quarterbacks had week 1. Mm-hmm. Don't you think that's the biggest part of it? You don't know what that NFL game speed looks like until you've been in it.
Well, they never had it. I mean, even playing in the preseason, remember, most of the time they're playing against guys who aren't the starters that are playing. Because remember, everyone is holding out their starters. So you're playing against backups and those things. And let's be honest, there's a different pace and intensity to how the backups operate than the starters. And when you're playing against guys that are veterans who can not only anticipate, but they quote unquote play the play, they're moving at warp speed, and those windows close really tightly. It's funny because you talked about the young quarterbacks studying Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams has been great throughout the preseason. That first regular season game, he's getting passes batted down left and right. The windows are closing tighter, and he's having to adapt on the fly. Man, the league is hard. It's hard for everybody, but it's really hard for quarterbacks. And some of the things that we assume when we get excited about these young players that they're going to step into the league, it's just not going to happen because you have to respect the game. But I will say this, and here's why with all the young quarterbacks, why I wouldn't kind of dismiss those guys, particularly Caleb and Jay and Bo Nix. Do you remember the conversation early in the WNBA season when people were talking about Caitlin Clark? And how Caitlin
turnover. She's going to set the turnover record.
And then somewhere in the middle of the season, it clicked. And I don't know if people have been paying attention, but she is wearing out the competition in the WNBA. And so sometimes you just got to trust the talent that it will eventually catch up to the tempo. And I'm just going to bank on Caleb and Jaden and Bo, the talent is going to allow them to catch up. And when it pops, it's going to pop much like Caitlin Clark popped in the WNBA.
Yeah, I would say Wemby on the NBA. You look at what Wembanyama did as the year went along, and how his numbers started to spike because the talent's there. Now it's just getting used to the tempo and the speed and the physicality, all that stuff, and they'll be able to adjust to that. I'm with you. I think those quarterbacks will be able to make those adjustments as we go forward. As we're going through these games, Buck, I want to hit you up on a few of them, and we'll go through kind of what we're looking at, what we want to see. The first one I think is intriguing just because I haven't seen them last week with the Raiders. They are going to take on the Ravens. That is a tough one for them. That is the Ravens coming off a little bit of a rest, right? They had the opener on Thursday night, so they get a little bit of room. A lot of attention on Lamar, missing those 2 throws late in that ball game. Although, man, on the likely is this far away from that being a completely different conversation if it gets his toe down. But just in that game, what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, so it's great that we had the conversation about the biggest improvement. So you're the Baltimore Ravens, you're John Harbaugh. This thing about Zach Orr, who just called his first game as a defensive coordinator. You now have had a few extra days to kind of digest what took place and to kind of put the pieces of the puzzle back together. Offensively, the Raiders are going to face a different deal from the Baltimore Ravens. I can guarantee you that Derrick Henry is going to get more touches and be more involved in the game plan. Lamar Jackson will settle down and do those things. And defensively, Zach Orr has a better feel for what he has and the flow of the game. Yeah, not a great luck of the draw for the Raiders taking on the Ravens. It's going to be a tough one. And playing them in their place, man, they're going to be frothing at the mouth to be able to get on the field for week 2.
This is going to be a challenge, a big challenge, in my opinion, for Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew won that quarterback job against Aiden O'Connell. They paid him a little bit more money. He comes in as someone who's got a lot more experience. Aiden O'Connell had some interesting moments, some bright moments last year in his first year. But he was a late round pick. He's not the most physically gifted guy. But I look at this game in this environment, a rested Ravens defense. They're going to be able to rush the quarterback. Man, I'm just saying, like, we're talking about people having to answer questions about whether or not they're going to keep their job. Daniel Jones has already had press conference questions. Do you feel like you're playing for your job this week? I feel like nobody's talking about this Raider one, but I feel like, man, if Gardner Minshew goes out there, and I think it could be tough. It could be very tough for him against this group in this moment coming off that game. That might be one of those ones that could be the first quarterback change that we see in the NFL that I feel like nobody's really talking about.
No, nobody's talking about it because that was a quarterback competition that kind of went down to the end. And there wasn't, if this was a fight, it wasn't a knockout. It was a split decision that could have gone anywhere. It could have been a draw, anything. And so for Gardner Minshew, what we saw is, the numbers are different, right? Because the numbers will suggest that he was very efficient in those things. But the mistakes that he had in that game against the Chargers,
short fields,
they're egregious errors. And for the Raiders, they have a small margin of error when it comes to how they have to operate offensively. Defensively, they play terrific. But offensively, he cannot turn the ball over, and he has to be able to play better. So you're right. It could be one where if it's ugly, you see Aiden O'Connell eventually run out to the field.
Yeah, we'll see what happens in that game. Interesting one. Are the Saints, was that just terrible Carolina? Or did the Saints come out there? To me, this is a statement for them. You come out there against the Cowboys on the road, Cowboys coming off of a big win over Cleveland. I don't think anybody really took the Saints seriously. Even coming off of that win, the conversation was just, man, Carolina stinks. So this is an opportunity for the Saints, Derek Carr and company to say, okay, hey, no, actually, we're pretty good. I think they have maybe the biggest opportunity to make a statement this week.
100%. I'm with you there. They do have an opportunity to make a huge statement. And for a team that has kind of talked about not being respected, man, what a better way to go out than to take on a team that is hot, that the TV viewing public wants to be hot because they're such a marquee brand. You knock off the Cowboys, then the conversation changes and the narrative changes around the New Orleans Saints. I will say this, Clint Kubiak's debut calling games for the Saints went really well. They did a really good job of mixing the running pass, throwing it all over the yard. Derek Carr looked very, very comfortable. We'll see if he can replicate that kind of performance against the Cowboys. And one of the things I don't know if we talked enough about, because we kind of dismissed the Cowboys because of all the contract controversy, Mike Zimmer his impact, not only on the defense, but I will say on the team. The one thing that we know about Mike Zimmer, anyone who's been around him, look, man, he's a no nonsense, a very attention to detail guy. What I saw from that defense was even more attention to detail than we saw under Dan Quinn. He found a way to unlock DeMarcus Lawrence. We saw him move Michael Parsons around. The Dallas Cowboys are a dangerous team, and I think Mike Zimmer's influence might have been underestimated prior to them kicking off the season.
Yeah, look, that was a statement that they made week 1 against the Cleveland Browns. Talisi Fuaga, one of our favorite players in the draft, tackle at Oregon State, played great for the Saints. And this is a big challenge, though, going from what he saw last week in Carolina to seeing this Dallas front. So looking forward to that game. I'm trying to go through and just pick out the intriguing ones, Buck. There are actually so many intriguing games, though. Bucks Lions, another one, I think, where the Bucks. I don't know if we didn't talk about them hardly at all in the offseason. They go out there and handle their business in impressive fashion. Baker Mayfield plays great in the opener. Now they get a chance, again, go on the road, take on a Lions team that everybody's focused on, everybody's talking about. And I feel like it punched them out of the tournament last year. So I feel like this is a big opportunity for Tampa.
Yeah, big opportunity. And it's funny, we're talking about them right at the gate because having a chance to study the Buccaneers offense yesterday, Baker Mayfield was terrific. No one talked about it. I know we don't do this in the pros, but if in the pros we gave out helmet stickers, Baker Mayfield would have a ton of helmet stickers. He completed 80% of his passes. He threw the ball to 7 different pass catchers. But the big 3 for them, Godwin, Evans, and White, they accounted for 19 of those receptions. And so he understands to keep the main thing, give the ball to the playmakers. They also accounted for 3 of those touchdowns. Baker Mayfield has it going. And I will say this, Baker Mayfield going to Tampa may be one of the best moves that we've seen because he not only goes to a team that has fallen in love with his personality, he's under the radar. He's in a city where he's kind of flying below the radar. He's matured and grown up. This is the Baker Mayfield that we saw at Oklahoma come out and the impact that he's had on this team. If they get this win, you really got to talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers kind of being in that conversation because we know they're going to play good defense with Todd Bowles. Offensively, they're much better than I ever envisioned this team being.
This game also reminds me, and again, the Lions, they're an impressive team. It's on one weekend, but I don't feel any regret having picked them as my team to come out of the NFC after coming off the win over the Rams last week. I think it's a complete team. I think it's an emerging team. This is going to be a great matchup. But one of the things I was thinking of in this game, particularly talking about the quarterbacks, I mean, has there ever been more evidence that's out there right now of let's not give up on quarterbacks? Jared Goff in this game. Remember, he was done. He was done under Jeff Fisher. Sean McVay came in there. Now all of a sudden, Jared Goff, he's playing at a championship level. Baker Mayfield bounced around multiple teams. Don't know if that's going to work out for him. He's solidified his career. It's only been one game for Sam Darnold, but this looks like this could be coming back for him. Geno Smith, notably, took a long time, but eventually he settles in. Like, I feel like you look around the league, Buck, and I look at people who wanted to, throw dirt on some of these quarterbacks after one game in their rookie season this past week. And I'm like, man, we've never had more evidence. You need to be patient with these guys.
Yeah, look, I think that's worthy of a deeper dive. What is it about the quarterback position in terms of like finding the answers and using those guys that are the cast-offs? You think about Geno Smith, Sam Darnold, you talk about
Think about Tua. Tua got benched his first year. People were labeling Tua a bust.
I think now more than ever, it's not only like fit and scheme. I would say it's the personality of the play caller and the play designer that also works. We both love and revere Kevin O'Connell, and we knew that he would work wonders with Sam Darnold. And you see it connect. There's something about like the soothing nature, and everyone doesn't need that, but I do believe the match between play caller, play designer, and quarterback is really important. And when we're thinking about these guys, it's almost like playing matchmaker. You don't get a chance to do this in the draft if you're the quarterback. You don't get a chance to pick this guy's personality.
I fit better with him, yeah.
But once you're on the streets, you do have that opportunity, and you see guys making better decisions sometimes in terms of where they land. Sam Darnold intentionally picking the Minnesota Vikings to have an opportunity to play under Kevin O'Connell is going to prove to be a very, very wise decision for him.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's a great deep dive of how these guys, once they get the right place, they get the right surroundings, that the talent then can show out and play a little bit. So something definitely to keep an eye on. Colts Packers is another great game, Buck. What are you looking forward in that one?
Well, obviously, no Jordan Love. I mean, how did the Packers adjust to Malik Willis being the quarterback? And Malik Willis hasn't been there long enough to really know the ins and outs of this offense. How does Matt LaFleur adjust this offense to help a young quarterback like Willis? Can they lean on the running game a little more with Josh Jacobs and company? Can they find a way to help Malik Willis develop the chemistry with the wide receivers? More importantly, can this defense carry the offense a little bit until the young quarterback, the new quarterback, finds his way? There are a lot of little storylines that are working for the Packers, but they got to get it going because their division is going to be so competitive. They can't afford to fall behind significantly behind the Lions and the Vikings and those. They got to, the Bears too. They got to get it going. They got to find a way to win without it being perfect.
Yeah, I went back and pulled up my Malik Willis scouting report. So I had him 26th, I believe, in that range on my list. I think it maybe it have been early 30s, but thick, sturdy quarterback, big time arm strength, playmaking ability, quick feet. Usually release the ball at a 3/4 slot. Ball jumps out of his hand, generates incredible RPMs, flashes the ability to fit passes in tight windows. Accuracy is inconsistent, at times too wide with his feet. The ball sails the perimeter. Shown the ability to change ball speed, but he can improve on layer throws. Misses out on some completions because his throws are too flat. He's effective extending and creating against pressure, which he faced a lot of in college. He's outstanding on QB draws, powers, and zone reads. He has burst and pulls through tackles. Overall, Willis is still a work in progress, but he has the most upside of any quarterback in that draft class. So when I go back through that, one of the things I'm thinking there is, okay, it's not a season ender for Jordan Love. I don't need to nurse and protect Malik Willis through 16 games for him to navigate. I'm cutting him loose, Buck. He's carrying it. He's carrying the rock 12, 14 times.
100%.
I'm talking quarterback power. I'm talking quarterback counter. Whatever we got to do to get to the finish line.
We got to win the game. We got to figure out a way to win the game. We got to be at our best, and we're going to need him to be able to get after it. And so, yeah, DJ, you're right. What are we waiting on? Let's get him going. Let's cut him loose. Let's give him every opportunity to be at his best, and let's see what it looks like at the end of it. I don't want to say this is a must-win game, but there's a lot of urgency that should go along with winning this game because they got to find a way to get it done.
All right, let's take a quick break. We come back. We'll get into some more of these games as well as our game of the week right after this. All right, Buck, Niners, Vikings. That's a fun one.
Yeah, real fun one. Look, man, you talk about the Niners who know Sam Darnold. They know him well from practicing against him. And this defense, they talk about being in the butt-kicking business, as Fred Warner kind of loosely talked about. They want to get after it. And there's been a lot of conversation. And I'll be honest, I worried about the 49ers having a Super Bowl hangover. That did not appear that opening week. But can they continue to be the bullies on the block defensively? Can they impose their will on a Minnesota Vikings offense that has a lot of weapons, has a lot of firepower, and Sam Darnold is very, very comfortable operating the X's and O's part of it? This is a big game for the Vikings, but really it's a big game for the Niners. Can they continue to be the team that we thought that they would be based on the way that they finished as runner-ups last season?
I go back to last year. San Francisco goes into Minnesota. Brock Purdy got a lot of heat for that game, if you remember. His numbers don't look terrible, 21 of 32, 72, a touchdown, but had the 2 interceptions. And I remember coming out of that game, people were like, okay, the shoe's falling off now. Like, we'll see Brock Purdy kind of come back to earth a little bit. He forced a couple balls. But again, obviously he didn't got them to the Super Bowl. But I'm curious to see how Purdy kind of responds to, returning to the scene of a game that wasn't his, up to his standards, so to speak.
What I like about Brock Purdy is the maturity, and I would say the just self-awareness that he presents. When people criticize him and they always take him to task about whether he's an elite quarterback or not, he kind of focuses on the main thing. And the main thing for him is getting his team to the winner's circle. He knows the money's going to be the money whenever it comes time to pay him. And he just has a great perspective on what he needs to do to help this team continue to win. I also believe Kyle Shanahan knows what he has at the quarterback position. We've talked about this being like a video game where he is able to utilize Brock Purdy as the joystick. Brock Purdy sees the game in a way that Kyle Shanahan sees the game, which is why I think we see so many big plays, a high level of efficiency from this offense since he has become QB1 in the Bay Area.
Yeah, it's been a perfect relationship there. I think that's got a chance to be the game of the week. Looking forward to that one. All right, I want to touch on this one just briefly from the Seahawks side of things. I did a kind of a deep dive on their defense, watching them and then pulling up all the numbers and looking at everything. They played great. I think it's got a chance to be one of the best defenses in the NFL. Mike McDonald running the show there. They've got dudes at all three levels of their defense. They can all run. The secondary, we talked to Leslie Frazier in the summer. This might be the best secondary in the NFL right now. They are loaded. They are stacked. Safeties, corners, Witherspoon at the nickel. Tariq Woolen continues to take the ball away on the outside. Julian Love's been awesome as a safety. So they've got an outstanding secondary. They've got a deep front. Byron Murphy's already making plays along that defensive line. Leonard Williams is really blossoming and playing well there. Boye Mafe coming off the edge has done good things. They've got speed at the second level at linebacker. Baker's there, the former Miami Dolphin who can really run. So they've got a really good defense. But the thing I want to hit you on was I went back and looked at the numbers. I want to look at their coverages. So you can go to PFF Ultimate and pull up the coverages that they're running. And when you pull it up, they're not like in the top 7 or 8 in any coverage. Like they're mixing and matching throughout the whole game. And I'm curious because I've heard coaches say, if you don't have any tendencies, you're not any good. Like this is what we do. This is what we major. We dictate, they react to us. But there's also the new school way of thinking of we're never going to allow you to get a beat on what we're doing. We're going to have it so mixed and matched. And I think that was something that really confused and was an issue for Bo Nix against that defense last week.
It's something that is hard to do. It's hard to do in the back end to carry a bunch of different coverages and to be able to execute them well. Give them credit in Seattle, their coaching staff, for being able to really be great instructors and teachers. Some of that is when you have veterans in the back end, you can do it, but a lot of it has to do with high IQ players. The one thing that everyone talked about when you asked about Mike McDonald and his impact in Baltimore, people talked about how he was able to make the complex simple, how he was able to use conceptual learning to get his guys to understand how to perform at a high level, while being able to mix in a bunch of different personnel groupings. That has to be the teaching for them to be able to carry so many different things. And so it's Mike McDonald, it's also their defensive staff. And I would say, look, Leslie Frazier did a great job for a long time working with a bunch of different teams as a coordinator. Him kind of being around to kind of help facilitate some of that learning, it certainly is not a bad thing in Seattle.
You remember when we talked about wideouts a few years ago when we were saying, the most underrated characteristic of these great wideouts is the toughness. Like there's the physicality and the toughness was undervalued. We focus so much on speed, but especially when you get to the NFL where the windows kind of shrink a little bit, just some of the physicality and the toughness. It also benefits you in the run game, but more so, just at top of routes and being able to be strong and through the catch. I look at the secondary, and I think and I saw this from Danton Lynn, who's the DC now with USC. They're asking about their defense and what one of the biggest emphasis they've made to turn it around through a couple games of the season. And he talked about how smart his guys were, linebackers and safeties, incredibly smart. And I'm sitting here thinking, man, is that the undervalued component to some of these great players and great defenses, just how dang smart they are?
I think so. And I'll go back to this, and I'll go back to Bill Belichick and the Patriots in the middle of their heyday. And they talked about really prioritizing intelligence, not only like academic intelligence, but prioritizing the instincts and the awareness, the things that happen between the lines. When you have smart players that can handle a lot of volume, it gives you the opportunity to be very flexible in how you approach the game each week. For so long in the Bill Belichick era, we talked about every game plan being a snowflake. Unique game plans that you didn't know. One week they're heavy man, the next week they're heavy zone. The week after that, they're zone pressures. The week after that, they're man pressures. Having a catalog of things that you can throw at people to really make them play left-handed. If this team is as smart as he talked about, DJ, you can do a bunch of different things, have a lot of fun attacking teams using complex schemes that the offense has to decipher, but they're really simplistic for the defense once they understand how to crack the code.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating conversation, man. One more game, then we'll get to the game of the week. Bears-Texans. That's going to be a fun one. That is going to be the Sunday night game. Looking forward to that one.
Yeah, two big-time quarterbacks that are kind of engaged in a shootout. A lot of questions about Houston and how would Stephon Diggs fit in. I would say he fit in really well because I looked at the stat sheet and Nico Collins had over 100 yards. Stephon Diggs had a pair of touchdowns. Tank Dell was involved. Joe Mixon has 159 yards on the ground. And CJ Stroud is just in the pocket dealing. What people may have missed out on with Stephon Diggs is, yeah, he may not be the true number one in Houston, but he's still an upgrade over anybody that you can have as the number two or number three. You still got to have someone that can account for him. And if he is playing nice in the sandbox with his teammates, it forces you to defend a lot of people, and most people don't have the personnel. So when I look at this, I look at what Eberflus has done with this defense and how they are still true to form when it comes to playing Tampa 2 and zone and those things. How is he going to slow this juggernaut down? The version of the Texans that we're seeing now, man, it exceeds anything like what we saw the previous year. This is a dangerous team that can win with a few different ways. Force, finesse, they can get it done a few different ways.
Yeah, I think, them finding a run game and being more physical up front is going to be, kind of that missing ingredient, that pitch that they didn't necessarily have. I think it's a very dangerous team. I am curious to see how Caleb does going into a really hostile environment. You think of the last, I know a lot of people focus on it in the run up to the draft, but you go to Notre Dame, it's a rivalry game, it's hostile. Obviously, the weather was an issue there. It won't be inside in Houston. But that was kind of the last real hostile environment that we saw Caleb in, and it was really the worst game that he's had throughout his 2 years, at least at USC. So I want to see how he does, how he's able to slow it down a little bit. And you mentioned it a little bit earlier on him. I want to see, can we just let's eliminate the batted balls. Okay, there's going to be some that are going to get away from you. You're going to miss some throws here. Maybe it's sail one. You're going to throw a worm burner. I just let's not give away plays. When you don't find a throwing lane and it gets bad at the line of scrimmage, first of all, there's a chance it gets picked and turn the ball over. That's no good. But more than anything else, you're just not giving yourself a chance. You're not giving the play a chance. Let's not give those away. So that should be a major point of emphasis, in my opinion, for this week is, hey, let's make sure we're finding throwing lanes here and let's not give away plays.
Yeah, you can't give those things away. You're right. You can't fix everything for Caleb Williams in 1 week. So let's see if we can get some little wins to build some momentum and some confidence within him. Even though he's one of the more confident people that we've been around, you have as many balls batted down and many misses as we've had, then it's going to be a situation where you just kind of have to figure it out, have to get better, and you hope that the Bears find a way to do it. But remember, DJ, he might be without a couple of receivers. Roma Dunze, he may not have Keenan Allen. He may be throwing to a bunch of newbies. And so you talk about that jump that he's expected to make from week 1 to week 2. He may be forced to make that jump without his primary pass catchers that we expected.
Yeah, use your legs a little bit, Caleb. You can use your legs a little bit more in this game. Fast track. We'll see if he can add some offense with his legs.
So look, DJ, this is our favorite part of it. It's time for the game of the week presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. This week, it's the Bengals at the Chiefs. The spread is -5, favoring the Chiefs. The over-under is 47.5.
What are we going to see from Joe Burrow? I mean, I know what the Chiefs are, and I know, they've got some speed back in their offense, so that makes them even more dangerous. I know what their defensive line looks like. I know what their secondary looks like. I feel like the Chiefs, I don't know what I'm looking for from them. I know exactly what I'm going to get from them. This game's all about what the heck are we going to get from the Bengals, and more importantly, is Joe Burrow going to be able to at least attempt to push the ball down the field, because it didn't happen last week.
Yeah, this team is so all out of sorts, and some of it, I would say, their own doing, right? The drama that took place with Jamar Chase before the game, not knowing if he was going to play, some of that due to food poisoning, a lot of it due to contract. You just didn't know. So I feel like this team was discombobulated from the start. Given their previous years where they started out slow, they always find a way to kind of fix it. If you're a Joe Burrow believer, then you think that he'll find a way to get it fixed. Whatever was bothering him, whatever he's dealing with in terms of physically, he'll find a way to overcome it and give the ball and put it in the hands of the playmakers so they can go to work. This is a tough one, though, because this is I would say, an even better version of the Chiefs than the version that we saw last year. Defensively, they're still as good as they were, but offensively, more speed, more explosiveness, more big play potential just because of the people that they've added. Huge challenge for the Bengals.
Yeah, I look at the Bengals, and one of the things that, roster-wise and how they're constructed, An area of their team I actually really liked was the depth of the tight ends that they have. They've got a bunch of tight ends they can get involved. Now, they had a fumble going in the end zone. I think it was Tanner Hudson who fumbled going in. You also have Gesicki, who can make some plays that wasn't able to quite finish with a touchdown. So I think those tight ends can complement, what we're talking about with them pushing the ball vertically down the field. I think that can open up the middle of the field a little bit. I don't think you want to be completely locked in and forcing balls in this game. So to me, I look for the Bengals, see if you get those tight ends a little bit involved, spread the ball around a little bit, but creatively and, be opportunistic about it. You've got to pick a time in the first 2 series, Buck, where we're going to protect and we're going to take a shot. Don't care if you complete it or not, but we are going to show that we are willing to at least access that area of the field. If not, the Chiefs defense will smother you. They will shrink the field and they will suffocate you. So you better come out early on in this game and at least show a willingness to try and get the ball out down the field over the top. I don't even care if it's caught or not.
Yeah, you got to push it down the field. You cannot get forced into playing half-court basketball at the YMCA. You just can't. You got to stretch the field. You got to push it. You have to remember to keep defenders back. I had a college coach who used to always say, you need to throw 2 deep passes a quarter. Take shots to back them up. If you connect on them, you can score 14 points each half because you're gonna find a way to catch someone slipping. This team needs to take more shots. They got to back them up so they can get back to doing their normal game plan where they can control it. So a lot of pressure on Joe Burrow to manage all of the things that are going on at the line of scrimmage while getting the ball to the playmakers and making sure he's balanced enough to keep the Kansas City Chiefs on their heels.
I feel like there's a 20% chance maybe that the Bengals eke out a close win. And I feel like there's an 80% chance that the Chiefs run them out of the building. That's the Chiefs team, again, also coming off the rest from a Thursday night game, getting a little extra time. They're going to be fresh. I don't know. I'm a little bit concerned about the Bengals. We'll see how this one goes. But if they do get smashed, Buck, I think you'll see the panic alarms get sounded in Cincinnati.
Yeah, I think they have to be sounded in Cincinnati if they do this. But remember this. The Bengals have made this a very personal game with the Kansas City Chiefs, from all of the little conversation about Arrowhead being Burrowhead to Mayors having conversation. They've got their attention, and so they're going to get the best version of the Kansas City Chiefs this weekend. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code MTS. New customers can bet just $5 to get $250 instantly in bonus bets only on DraftKings Sportsbook with the code MTS. The crown is yours.
Yeah, fun to jump into some of those games, including that big one there that's coming up. That'll be 1:25 Pacific, so 4:25 East Coast. That'll be Bengals Chiefs. Looking forward to a great contest there. All right, that's going to do it for us today. We got one more pod coming your way, so be on the lookout for that one tomorrow. We'll see you right here on Move the Sticks.